Y'all, welcome back to Kentucky Fried Wargaming, where two guys who aren't qualified to talk about anything decide to talk about a game with hard math and chance. I'm Joe.
And I'm John.
And today we're coming to you with a new series that we have wanted to do for a while. Since the
years,
beginning,
actually.
if I'm being honest. When we started this podcast at the beginning, like the thing we wanted to talk about was lore, but we didn't know if people would be into it. And we didn't know if we could really get people to watch it. But by God, people have talked about how they want more. So we're going to do it. And it's really twisting our arms. God, it's so exciting. But as we start this, it is going to be a new regular on the channel. And I am so excited to be able to start incorporating these. But we wanted to kind of start with sort of like an upfront understanding of what you could expect on how often we're going to be putting these out versus like the podcast episodes that are normal. Because John and I unfortunately do work full-time jobs, as do the people behind the scenes.
So we can't just record 17 episodes in a week. It was 27 episodes in a week and then just release them all immediately.
Yes.
Crazy people.
Yeah, we want to try to come into this honestly and not take away from the stuff we are already putting out on the channel. So that means the 2 podcasts a month are staying. We are not reducing them. And we are going to add videos like this in, the lore stuff, in addition, where we try to, in 15 or 20 minutes, take some piece of this setting and break it down in a way that is understandable so that you can get it in short form. And we are going to start with one of these a month. And if things go well, if it's not too high of a burden, if we can get into the groove, maybe this becomes an alternating week thing. But starting slow with one reasonably. And hopefully that helps y'all to know what to sort of expect from us. Because, I mean, partially, I'm being honest, we chose to do these videos because people asked for them in the comments. The response to the faction focuses were so incredibly kind. And some of the things people were most jazzed and most kind about were like the lore bits of us just like shooting the shit about how cool this is. And that's
just talking about
honest.
Orc DoorDash. We're just like, Orc DoorDash forever.
Yes. And that's because we truly, like, no acting. We just love the lore.
We do.
And if I'm being honest, I like the lore probably more than I like the game. I don't know if I would have been as invested if not for the cool stories around this.
I don't think you're alone. I think the lore is the most popular part about the game in general, like overall.
Yeah. It adds something to every game you play that is almost indescribable. And I just find myself coming back to it again and again because of that. And through this series, we want to be able to kind of share that with you guys. Because a lot of the comments were from people who found the channel and were really excited to start in 10th or return from back in the day when they played earlier, 3rd or 4th. It could be a long time since you played. So if you're a returning person or you're new, you probably don't know this stuff. And it's hard to get into because there's so much of it.
Yeah, it's very expansive.
There's so much constantly. To cover. I mean, even us trying to format this episode took like an hour because there's so much we had to choose what to talk about and what to not. And that's where John and I want to give a small disclaimer. John, please give the skimming disclaimer so we don't get roasted in the comments.
So, we're going to be talking about the Imperium today, the basis of the entire setting. For better or worse, it is like what informs everything else. And it is a massive amount of lore and nuance and things inside of that umbrella. So we are taking the most overhead view possible on what the Imperium is, how it came to be, and what it means in the modern setting. If you want more about individual things we're talking about or we make references to, feel free to ask in the comments or reach out. We will talk endlessly about this with people. But to keep this video shorter, we're not going to talk endlessly on this video about it, but we will expand on it. And there's lots of content creators out there who have made all sorts of videos about all sorts of things involving the Imperium. It's very popular. You can also watch them. We won't be mad. We watch them too. It's okay.
That's part of the inspiration, is they
Exactly.
taught us the lore. Now we're trying to pass it on, but in our own flavor. And yeah, I think John said it best. That, like, the Imperium is at the core of almost everything. Any story you're going to read or understand in the 40k universe is probably going to involve the Imperium in some way, either directly or indirectly by their influence and threat that's everywhere. So before we can talk about chaos and all the Xenos stuff and the different sub-factions, we have to start here. And to talk about the Imperium, I think you kind of have to start with the Emperor. If the Imperium is at the heart of all of the setting, the Emperor is at the heart and core of the Imperium.
For both fortunately and unfortunately, you are correct.
Wow, what an incredible character that is very hard to describe in any cohesive way we have found in trying to write our brief outline show notes. But I think what is easiest to understand is to, like, understand how he rose to prominence along with humanity's progression. Because obviously this takes place in the modern setting in the year 40,000. And in the year 40,000, there's a whole lot of history that has happened kind of before our eyes pick it up. But the short of it is humanity had a rise much like ours, where technology developed. As technology developed, industrialization developed. As industrialization developed, the breakthroughs became more rapid and larger in leaps and bounds. And eventually, humanity became so advanced that they were incredibly dominant species with a high quality of life. And then, for lack of a better touchstone, I mean, essentially the plot to Terminator happened. We made AIs that were going to make life easier, and machines so we could work less hard, and, you know, we could progress faster, and everyone would be less strained. And that worked until it didn't. And then humanity almost was exterminated by the AI.
Yes, and most of the history from that is just gone. It's disappeared. And since then, there's been technological regression from that, like, pinnacle.
Yeah.
And then, as that, and the Emperor's around during that time frame, to put it in perspective. Like, he is around, working behind the scenes behind all of this, and realizes that was not the way, or at least that's what he believes. There's other things that happen within the galaxy that makes this happen, and then we continue moving on to him taking humanity on the brink of total annihilation, and him trying to consolidate it and make it into something. And he starts on Terra itself with a thing called the Unification Wars, where he is taking all of these desperate tribes and making them work together to take over the planet to then move out into the stars. And part of doing that means that he is doing biological, like, experimentation and research to create things like the Space Marines, the Thunder Warriors, an ancient version of Space Marines, the Custodes, eventually the Primarchs. Like, he kind of breaks the laws of nature to make these super soldiers. And that's a reoccurring theme on, okay, was this your hubris that did this? Was this your own pride? Or was this needed? Why did you do this? Because there's a positive and a negative to everything that this man does. On one hand, he saves millions and billions of people. But on the other hand, he dooms millions and billions of people. And the math doesn't always add up.
And there are no definitive answers, to be clear. Like, I think individually, in the setting, characters have opinions. Us, as, like, people making this video and giving you our interpretations, we have opinions, but, like, and you will draw your own depending on what perspectives of the books you read. But it's difficult. But these are the things that we're trying to keep in that are facts. You know, his Imperium did expand, and he made the Primarchs, 20 of them at first. 2 of them are mysteriously gone from the setting. That left 18. And those 18 Primarchs were, you're going to hear about them a lot. Some of them even exist in the current setting. but they are like the peak of what he could create using a mixture of arcane genetic alchemy and magic, for lack of a better description, to make each of them this incredible, bespoke warrior, leader, diplomat, and each of them are unique with their own particular jobs.
They're often described as demigods in power, compared to him being a god. And though he references himself not as one, and the Primarchs often don't call themselves demigods, it's clear that he, in his hubris, did this on purpose.
It does seem a little weird to me. Like, I am not a god. Do not call me a god. I am just choosing to manifest as a gold-armored, radiant being that radiates awe to everyone around me and does magic that looks like miracles and brings everyone into my fold and influence of loving me. Yeah, not a god, huh?
Yeah.
I wonder why everyone thinks you're a god.
Yeah.
Wow, what a surprise. Who could have seen it coming? And he makes these sons. He gathers them. They were scattered at first away from him. That's a long story. But he finds them all. He's going to, essentially, his hope is that they can run his empire while he is occupied with bigger things. The human empire stretches to the stars. And then something called the Horus Heresy happens. John, I need you to sum up the Horus Heresy for me. Now, that's like, what, 62 novels or something? I just need you to sum it up in like a minute.
All right, so you've seen Jerry Springer, and you also recognize when men have daddy issues.
Yep.
Those two things combined, except they have massive power armor and guns.
Yeah, the Emperor insists he is not the father. He's running off this set.
The Horus Heresy is a massive undertaking with lots of very incredible nuance and fantastic storytelling. But the core of it is really the Emperor created this life and these beings of immeasurable power and gave them none of the actual ability to rationalize it emotionally. And so they are both scrambling to figure out how to exist and at the same time how to deal with the things going on around them as forces beyond their control or their fathers play against them to make them into the worst version of themselves. And so each of these characters is challenged in some way to become either the worst, most tragic version of themselves or the best, most capable version of themselves in some regards. And they both happen. And they fight each other. And they have brotherly quarrels. They have father-son engagements. They have rivalries and camaraderie all throughout the Horus Heresy. And their sons, the Space Marines, do the same. And this all accumulates at a massive event called the Siege of Terra, where the final remnants of the Loyalists and the final remnants of the heretics fight against each other. And they really, they reference it in the Siege of Terra books multiple times in a way that I think really puts the pen in it. And that is, this is the end of history. Win or lose, it does not matter. History has now ended. A new era is beginning. And it does not matter who wins and loses this battle whatsoever. Because so much death, so much destruction, so much is going to happen that anything of value is lost in this fight. Which is a sub-theme of Warhammer in general. That, like, though there are some things worth fighting for, at some point when the war is never ending, what is left?
Yeah, I mean, truly, if there's one thing I want to put a pin in for the Horus Heresy, it's that it stretches across the entire galaxy. It is a total war in the literal sense. Nowhere escapes its influence. And the cost in human lives is incalculable. Absolutely incalculable by the massive scale of this. And all of this culminates in that big battle on Terra, which the climax of that climax is the Emperor and Sanguinius, who is one of his most beloved sons, jumps onto the ship of Horus, who is leading the traitor forces, the Chaos forces. And a big battle ensues. And in the end of it, Sanguinius the angel son dies, and then the emperor is wounded and destroys Horus, which means Chaos has lost, technically, but the emperor is badly wounded. And he's so wounded that he cannot continue being forward in this empire anymore. He is in an almost death-like state. He is comatose, on death's doorstep, unable to speak, unable to move, unable to physically communicate or be active. And the only way he remains sort of alive is his followers putting him on what they refer to as the Golden Throne, which is a mixture of, again, magic and technology, which keeps his body there and his spirit somewhere in the ether, but is fueled by the souls of human beings
that are constantly sacrificed to this throne that he does not approve of, or did not approve of in his lifetime, that is now being done.
And that is what's called the Horus Heresy era, or 30k. The modern setting is in 40k. It takes place 10,000 years after that moment. And I feel like you need to understand how far humanity fell from, like, peak of human enterprise and expansion. And then, like, we fell a number in the beginning of the Horus Heresy, fell further in, like, the ending of the Horus Heresy, which went so badly for everyone. And now we have fallen even further in the 10,000 years between.
Yes.
Because modern 40k is bleak. The Imperium was founded on the idea of, like, saving humanity from extinction and to unite everyone under one banner, and, like, to push the idea of, like, a logical secular empire. All of that is gone.
Yeah, what is left is the shattered ideals of the emperor, or everything he portrayed. Like, he was trying to push ideals of secularism and, like, logical, beneficial collectivism across for humanity. And though he still did it in a terrible, power-hungry way, there were still positives, and now there are next to none, as they have held on to the idea of holding on to power, but have not held on to any of the other beneficial aspects of it, and instead has become a dogmatic, totalitarian, regressive regime where any form of expression, any form of technological advancement, any form of, like, questioning the status quo is met with, like, vicious, immediate repercussions. Being exiled if you're lucky, downright murdered and disappeared if you're not.
And let's be honest, most of the time, it's the latter. I mean, human life here in modern 40k is cheap.
And some would argue that they are still the protagonists of the setting, but most of the time they are their own antagonists, where, like, the protagonists are the individual people that have to exist in this, like, totalitarian nightmare, but the enemy is normally fabricated by themselves or made entirely because of the actions of the regime itself. Like, the Imperium actively cannot take care of humanity at large, and this causes rebels, this causes traitors, this causes people to fall to chaos. It allows these, like, dark forces to manipulate people, because the regime's entire purpose is to maintain and hold on to power, not to improve the substantial needs of people.
Yeah.
Up to and including engaging in, like, decades and centuries long violence against other races that, like, want the same goals as them, but neither side can get beyond the bloody nose.
Yeah, it's hard to, like, do diplomacy with someone when they are a 10,000-pound gorilla with a shotgun and, like, they are on site fighting you. Like,
exactly.
How do you make inroads?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's absolutely horrific. And we'll probably talk more about that when we get to Chaos, because a lot of, like, when you get to Chaos, there are a lot of people totally corrupted by Chaos who are now totally evil. But many of those got there because they were driven to desperation, to survive. in a place where they had no hope and no way that they could see to continue to live. And also, some of those that are considered heretics and like are just considered chaos worshippers are not chaosy, but they just object to the Imperium in one of many ways. But there is no room for nuance in the Imperium, which is part of what makes it so horrific. And not only is it horrific to live in, but it is not progressing. Because if you try to advance technologically, especially, it is heresy. It's tech heresy. The Emperor is viewed as the god. The Emperor, by the people who make technology, is viewed as the Omnisaya, the god of machines. Everything that they have now obviously must be spawned from him. Would you question the god? Would you question the only god? Do you think your ideas are superior to his? So any idea could just get you executed. And when having ideas and iterations on design can get you executed, boy howdy, not a lot of new ideas come forward. Because of course they don't. And that has led to not only a societal decay in the Imperium, but a technological decay.
For sure.
Because those things are directly linked to each other in this sort of religious setting that the people of the setting try to survive within.
Which, that all sounds horrible. That sounds terrible.
That's not even it.
So why do we like it, right? So why do we spend countless hours reading books and listening to audiobooks and listening to videos and painting miniatures and buying miniatures and printing miniatures and enjoying all of this? Why has this become a almost obsession for us? And for me, the answer to that question is, it's neat. It is a really good exploration of the narrative idea that though the system itself is cruel and mean and the absolute worst possible thing that you can imagine, there are still individuals within that setting who actively seek to do the right thing, or the right thing that they believe, the most right thing they believe in the moment, and still actively seek to challenge what is going on in the universe and to stand against unknowable, unfathomable horrors. In the same way that H.P. Lovecraft is interesting because of the relation to the fear of the unknown, a lot of 40k is interesting because of the relation to the fear of a thing larger than the self that you cannot possibly fight.
Yeah.
Alone. You have to interact with other people. And some of those interesting stories within 40k are individuals who go, I can't do this alone. The Imperium is not going to save me. The Chaos Gods are not going to save me. Nothing is going to save me. But I have a group of 20 dudes with me, and we might just get to the ship out alive.
Yeah. I saw an interview with Dan Abnett, who I think put it best. There is no capital H hope in the Warhammer 40k universe.
No.
There is no hope that all of these factions are going to set aside their differences and come together hand in hand with peace to work against chaos and everyone to live happily ever after. There's no hope for that. But there is hope for the characters individually in their stories. And I think that sort of bleak juxtaposition leads to interesting moral quandaries. And it creates a world with some nuanced positions of some of these characters that is just compelling to watch them struggle through and solve or fall to chaos because of. But either way, it's fun to read and to make your own factions with it.
Yeah, the backdrop they've created is so wide and expansive that you can catch any sort of story you want from in this. There are spy stories, there are war stories, there are romance stories, there are horror stories, there are adventure stories, there's even comedy stories. They all exist within this big umbrella, and it all has this dark underpinning to it that is, the tragic nature of this setting, and how at the end of the day there is no capital H hope. What do you do?
And I don't know, it ticks a box for me that is similar to Werewolf the Apocalypse, where there is no hope. The war is lost. What do you do about it? And I just like it. You know, you're raging against the dying of the light in the most the most literal way. And I think that's fun to talk about. And I think now that we have done the shortest talk about the entirety of the Imperium, maybe in history, we are going to be looking at some of the other big powers in the setting. And the next one I think we have to talk about for you to understand the setting and to get into whatever your individual interests are is chaos. Because if the Imperium is sort of like the earth that everything circles around, chaos is the dark void around all of that. It is ever present and will be probably roughly equally difficult, but we're going to do our best. And if you do have ideas for things you want us to specifically cover, please send them. Because
yes, there's a lot.
Whatever you want the most, we will do first. Because we have far too many ideas. We'd appreciate them.
Yeah, we have like a document with like 700 different lore topic videos.
Yeah, there's so much. I don't know if we are over. We're over hundreds. And we appreciate your support, and we hope you like it. For now, that's been all of our opinions. Bonafide Kentucky Fried. And we'll see you guys on the next one.